"10,000 years ago, a major revolution occurred. Suddenly, there was an abundance of food. Man went from hunter-gatherer to farmer. But in one area, we are still hunter-gatherers, in the area of energy. We still gather wood, oil, coal, and gas. Our hunting grounds now cover vast areas. The whole world has been combed in our quest for energy. Even our feeding grounds are no longer safe. But the hunt causes problems, huge problems. Climate change, health issues, shortages. The price is high in all respects. We are happy when the oil price drops, although we know that it's bound to increase in the end to ever higher levels. Fossil fuels have become a source of speculation, and speculators want to earn money. That's the bottom line. Fossil fuels mean power, and supplies may be forthcoming or cut off at will, which could lead to war. Fortunately, the search for gas and oil seems to be losing ground to a new revolution: the large-scale harvesting of sunshine.
I don't think anybody's understanding how big this is or how big this could be.
I think it's going to become one of the largest growing, fastest growing industry sectors in India.
One of the real things challenged about the industry is we have to quit thinking small, we have to think big.
And I see this spilling to our neighboring countries like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, all of them.
The solution for solar is not to think about, you know, a few panels here, a few panels here. It's a field full of panels of arrays.
We've taken our revenues from about $10 million in 2004 to projections of about $1.4 billion this year. So extremely rapid growth, tripling for the last 2 years.
The world has changed, and so has solar. Solar is cost-effective today.
I don't think the average person on the street really could fathom how big this industry could be. I mean, it's a gigawatt industry in the next 5 years.
My advice to all governments, to all companies, including to conventional power companies, don't make new large investments for conventional energies. It will become stranded investments in the next decade.
One country has started harvesting sunshine with a vengeance. The air is now cleaner, renewable energy is cheaper, and fossil fuel dependence has decreased. People driving through southern Germany will see farmhouses with solar panels everywhere they look. Even hills are completely covered in solar panels. Quietly and cleanly, these solar power plants generate electricity. Klaus Gierlecke builds these solar power plants. He's been involved in installing solar panels ever since the 1990s, but in recent years his company has experienced explosive growth.
The 90s were really hard, and we did a lot in Spain and southern countries, a lot of off-grid systems for small houses somewhere in the desert or things like that. Nowadays, we are mainly focused on big free-field systems, on-grid systems like what you see here. And the company grows. Now we are 120 persons, and every year we are looking for 100 new persons at the moment. So we grow a lot.
Solar energy is a booming business. It's Germany's fastest growing industrial sector. In recent years, the German governments subsidized the production of solar electricity supplied to the grid. Suppliers are paid twice as much for solar electricity than they are for conventional electricity. This helps to finance the construction of solar power plants. A fund is set up and shares are issued. That means the harvesting of both sunshine and money.
That's one of the main reasons. In former times, 15 years ago, the main reason for doing PV systems was idealism, the wish to change the energy sector. Nowadays, we are talking about earning money. So the fund makes roughly 6%. This is what we promise in the prospectus. And in the end, the result is roughly 7–8%. For 1,000 euros, you make a profit of 6%, and you buy a machine that makes you for the next 20 years the current you need. So you make your green current for the next 20 years just by investing in the right machine. You don't have to give away the 1,000 euro, it's just an investment. So the question is, do you bring it to the bank or do you pay it into such a solar fund?
Germany's huge lead in the area of solar energy is due to the introduction of a so-called feed-in tariff law. This law obliges electricity companies to buy energy from all kinds of renewable energy sources. The price of the renewable energy is guaranteed for the next 20 years and is paid for by a monthly tax of approximately €1 on ordinary electricity. Making Germany a solar economy was the fantasy of just one man. At the end of the 1980s, socialist politician Hermann Scheer decided to focus his efforts on solar energy and wrote 2 books on the subject. He steered the tariff law and the subsidy measures through the German parliament, but had to fight all sorts of energy scenarios along the way.
We have 3 kinds of energy scenarios. One, to play down the role of solar energy by scientists who are on the payroll of the power companies or who think in their categories, in their paradigm. Second, more ambitious scenarios who show, let's say, 50% renewable energies contributions up to, let's say, 2050. And many scientists have not enough courage. They don't want to leave too far the mainstream of the debate, because immediately when they go beyond these limits, they will become denounced as being not serious. And that means they don't have the courage to do that. And there are others, this is the third category, and such scenarios exist since 30 years, who show 100% renewable energy solution, 100% for all energy needs. And these are the only adequate scenarios, because it is very easy to show that all energy needs can be met by renewable energies, all energy needs. It's very simple to show it. To speak about limited potential is ridiculous. It has nothing to do with science, only with mythology.
A frequently heard myth about the use of solar energy is that it takes up space, a lot of space. But that's actually not true. An area the size of France would be big enough. Calculations show that with the help of current technology, an area covering 300,000 square kilometers in the Sahara is enough to meet man's total annual energy consumption. From a global perspective, this is quite a modest-sized area.
We need technologies. to harvest it and to convert it into modern energy needs. The only question is how fast can we introduce a new industrial sector producing technologies for harvesting renewable energies.
Solar energy provides new jobs and new ideas. Christoph Köhler has found a new profession. He's now a solar roof investor. He took out a €10 million loan and now drives around the country all day long in search of roof space to rent on which he can install solar cells.
We are always searching about roofs like this, and it's interesting for us the type of the roof and the pitch, the alignment, and of course the owner of the roof. We rent this roof from the owner for 20 years and get near 50 cents per kilowatt hour.
For 20 years?
For 20 years, it's a guarantee.
By the government?
By the government, yes.
So that's a good business.
This is a really good business because the return of invest is near after 15 years.
The introduction of the feed-in tariff laws are the key to Germany's success. There, by law, grid managers must adapt their systems to allow investors to make money from the production of solar electricity. Innovation and the ultra-fast development of Germany's solar energy industry has been the result. Germany is now one of the largest solar cell manufacturers in the world. But that didn't happen on its own.
It was an intellectual debate. It was a debate in the first years to contradict to all the underestimations, to all the practically to contradict to all the energy experts. The energy experts are a part of the problem. That's my experience. And it was necessary to contradict them, to show that they are wrong, to show that they create myths, to show that they give intentionally disinformations in order to block any consideration consideration about an alternative. This was the first period. And then to create a fantasy, what could happen and what would be the benefits to shift to renewable, with a shift to renewable energies. And this mobilized many people.
This is a really good building. Look over there. There's a lot of space. It's a farm building, and a lot of farmers want to rent out this kind of roofs. We ask them at the fence. We stop at the car and say, hello, you want to rent out your roof? And this kind of roofs are not so good. This is optimal, but it's my own.
Köhler is able to invest partly because Scheer also introduced a separate subsidy program for 100,000 solar panel roofs. It was an idea that even went too far for Greenpeace.
The Greenpeace organization proposed a 50,000 roof program. And then they were asked why they don't support my 100,000 roof program proposal. They said it is not realistic. And but I succeeded in getting a decision, a majority for the 100,000 roof program. Nevertheless, although some in the party board of the SPD said why we should be more radical than Greenpeace, my argument was we should think about the industrialization of that. This is not the concern of Greenpeace, but we should look about clean energy and new jobs, new industry. we must have a broader view, and therefore we must have a broader program.
Munich. More than 700 companies from all corners of the world have gathered for the biggest solar trade fair ever. Last year the trade fair was held in Freiburg, but it's since doubled in size, so only Munich is big enough to hold it now. Halls full of the latest solar technology gadgets. Solar energy is hot, sizzling hot. And companies are seeing explosive growth, like SunPower, for instance, which produces high-performance black solar cells.
Our company has been growing extremely rapidly, much faster than the market as a whole over the past few years. This technology was commercialized first in 2004, and during that time we've taken our revenues from about $10 million in 2004 to projections of about $1.4 billion this year. So extremely rapid growth, tripling for the last 2 years. It's been a lot of work.
Solfocus is a similarly growing company, and it has a new technology. It started producing large-scale systems using cheap mirrors made of glass and aluminium to concentrate sunshine onto more expensive, very high-performance solar cells. This drastically reduces the cost of solar energy. They envisage a huge market.
It is a big economy. I mean, even if you look at what's already been done, I mean, I think today Germany has more jobs in the renewable energy world than they have in automotive and engineering together. So to me, it's already proven it's a viable world.
The number of things you need to think about, and we found that you can reduce installation time by as much as a half and get on and do more systems and make more profit.
As solar energy approaches the cost parity with fossil fuels, you're not looking at a solar industry, you're looking at an energy market, which is huge. So what you're seeing is for a while now, the technology has been moving at a pace where the efficiency's been crawling up and the costs have been crawling down. With what I really call disruptive technologies, things like our concentrated photovoltaics or some other technologies out there, you're looking at a technology where you're changing that trajectory. You're now looking at efficiencies that can ramp at a very steep ramp and costs that can come down at a very steep ramp. And realistically, that can put this type of technology providing energy at cost parity with fossil fuels by 2011, 2012. The solution for solar is not to think about a few panels here, a few panels here. It's a field full of panels of arrays where you're producing clean energy instead of energy created by carbon-emitting processes. So I don't think the average person on the street really could fathom how big this industry could be. I mean, it's a gigawatt industry in the next 5 years.
The costs for renewable energies can only go down, because all costs for renewable energies are, with the exemption of biomass, only costs for technologies. Not any more costs for fuels, no costs for energy transportation, for infrastructures, primary energy transportation. That means no externalities at the same time. That means they can only go down because technology costs go down by mass production and running technological improvements. And the playroom for technological improvements is much larger with new technology than with old technologies.
Just one single oil company has also been trying to grab a piece of the pie. But at the trade fair, they don't want to comment. Not surprising, considering the solar energy market seems to be slipping through their fingers. It's been taken over by the electronics industry that's learned that upsizing and mass production works. Applied Materials is one of the companies that supplies machines for the production of chips and solar cells. Mass production and technological innovation are the buzzwords here.
I think what we're seeing is a a quantum leap of consciousness happening here about energy, where energy comes from, and that there are solutions that have been studied in the lab now for more than 25 or 30 years that are ready for commercial, large-scale use. We have a history of 40 years of making equipment for making integrated circuits, and about 3 years ago, we began to provide the equipment to use in building up factories for large-scale solar manufacturing. As factories get larger and the scale of production gets larger, the speed of cost reduction accelerates. And what's happening today all around the world is the cost of a solar panel is coming down very rapidly, and the price of electricity is going up. So our ability, what we're seeing with the equipment is the opportunity to serve many of the new growing areas in the world that need electricity that's cost effective.
We are only in the beginning. What happens is a revolution, a new technological revolution. This happens.
For the layman, it's not immediately apparent, but a revolution is going on in the industry, a revolution that's even bigger than the IT revolution in recent decades. And it's already being dubbed the ET revolution, the energy technology revolution.
This industry is maturing rapidly, and it's moving from the laboratory to commercial business. It's an industry, many of the people who have come to visit us at this conference have come from the integrated circuit business, and they say this is just like 30 years ago, with the transistor coming in to replace vacuum tubes. And suddenly a whole new market vista opened up. The panorama of all of those possibilities is being seen and tried here at over 1,000 exhibits. It's an incredibly exciting time for all of us, and it's part of growing up. And there's an excitement about growing up as well, large companies as well as small, finding a way to participate in this need that we have.
All technological revolutions have had an initiator. And we are the initiators of that. And this will lead to a development which will initiate a break of the conventional energy system in the next decade. And the business changes from an energy business to a technology business. That means the losers are the conventional power companies. The winners of this development are companies in the economic field, are the companies who produce the technologies for harvesting renewable energies and converting it and store it.
Scheer's message is clear. New industries are taking over energy production. His words seem to be confirmed by emerging economies like India. The Indians have huge plans, plenty of sun, vast energy requirements, and a strong, innovative force.
The local interest in the country is basically, it's a huge interest, and we see India taking off into a mega market. Probably 2009, like Vinay said, I would say more in the region of 2010, it's going to explode.
Moser Baer Industries is one of the world's largest manufacturers of optical media. It's investing heavily in the latest solar technology.
We're not a module manufacturer, we're a solar energy provider. So that means we want to grow the solar industry, and we have made investments in crystalline silicon, in thin film, large investments, and we have also made investments, equity investments in making polysilicon material. We've made investments in future technologies like concentrated technologies like SolFocus, for instance, is our partner, and we've made other investments too. We are looking at it from a much wider scope. How do we become the best help for promoting solar energy as such? An entire new industry is emerging, not only in solar manufacturing, it's going to be a captive consumption of solar panels, which means our solar integration industry is going to increase, the solar energy services industry is going to increase, this whole industry is going to grow. I think it's going to become probably one of the largest growing, fastest growing industry sectors in India. And I see this spilling to our neighboring countries like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, all of them.
People are remembering from the last time we had an oil embargo, 1978, solar was too expensive. It was about $30 a watt for a solar panel. Today, it's well below $3 a watt. There's been a factor of more than 10 in cost reduction. Part of what's important here is to get the message out that the world has changed and so has solar. Solar is cost effective today.
Seville, Spain. There's enough sun. And as things now stand, Spain will be the first country in which electricity generated by sunshine will cost the same as electricity from fossil fuels. The Spanish are following Germany's example and are also introducing legislation that will make it possible to supply clean electricity to the grid. And electricity utility companies have also realized that the sun is their new fuel. Abengoa is experimenting with large mirror power plants. The power plants currently under construction should provide 300 megawatts, which is enough for a town the size of Seville.
This solar plant, PS10, is the first commercial tower plant to come into operation in the world. So there were several research and development projects in the past making use of this technology that proved that the technology was feasible. But finally, there were never a company that invested the money in order to make this technology commercial. In this case, Abengoa made the effort to finance this project and to put this plant into operation, and now it's a reality.
Mirrors measuring 120 square meters each reflect sun onto just one point on a massive tower. This results in high temperatures which are used to drive steam turbines to generate electricity.
Well, at this moment, these technologies are being developed in some countries that are supporting the revolution. In Spain, for example, we have what we call a feed-in tariff that is paid for every kilowatt hour of electricity that we generate, and that makes possible the economics of these projects. As a matter of fact, at this moment in Spain, there is coming into development the competition between different companies, and that makes costs go down very quickly, and you have to work to develop it and to put it into real operation and to demonstrate that it's feasible and that it's real. And we think that it will arrive much sooner than many of the other actors in the energy sector think. As a matter of fact, the rising prices of the oil every day help us a lot in this work.
The Spanish are looking beyond their own borders. For instance, Spain is involved in the construction of large solar power plants in Morocco and Algeria. Power plants that concentrate sunshine, better known as concentrated solar power plants, or CSPs for short, are certainly on the increase. Even so, they're not new. In the Mojave Desert in the United States, there are two big CSP plants, where parabolic mirrors are used to produce steam that drives turbines. The plant at Kramer Junction went into operation more than 20 years ago, and experience has shown that this is an extremely efficient concept.
This plant has been in operation since construction between 1986 and 1988. So we've had commercial operation here, self-sustaining in the commercial environment for years. It's all private investment. There were some tax incentives that attracted the investment, but it is privately held, and there's a long-term contract with the utility that makes it a self-sustaining business. This plant is a demonstration that it's reliable, dependable, and absolutely ready for further expansion. You build this kind of solar field, you know what kind of performance and energy you're going to get out of it.
The German company Schott supplies the tubing used to collect sunshine. The company's been involved in solar energy for 5 decades, but recently they've barely been able to keep up with demand.
The first plant was built in the 1980s, and then it took 20 years and not much was happening. And now we see more than 20 projects at the same time. So concentrated solar power is widely accepted, and we see more projects than ever before. We are engaged in so many projects that it is right now quite difficult to fulfill all customer needs.
CSP plants are extremely effective in high sunshine areas with little cloud. Will the deserts become our new energy grounds? It seems so. The Club of Rome, the German aerospace laboratory, and Schott recently put forward a spectacular plan, Desertec. This huge plan involves the construction and installation of a network of solar plants in the countries bordering the Mediterranean Sea and the desert regions of northern Africa. These mega plants could supply electricity to Europe, for instance, by building a direct current international grid. Jordan, Amman. The harvesting of sunshine in the deserts is not only intended for use in Europe, but is also for their own use, of course. As it happens, the plants will not only produce electricity, but will also turn salt water into fresh water. So this tackles both the energy shortage and also the water shortage, which is a huge problem in the Middle East. One of the plan's spokesman is His Royal Highness Prince El Hassan Bil Talal of Jordan, former president of the Club of Rome.
Well, essentially it is coastal solar thermal power. That means a series of coastal thermal power stations, power and desalination in cogeneration. And the concept is to take the solar power from the Gulf region across North Africa into Europe. So it is clean power for Europe, hydrogen for Europe, and power and fresh water for what is called the NAIN region, the North Africa Near East region. And the solar plan takes into consideration the proposition that Desertec, which I presented to the European Union, includes a consensus for the first time between the entrepreneurs, the policymakers, the technicians, so there's nobody out of the box. Everybody is agreed on the principle. The only difficulty that I see is the competition that this might create with the traditional monopoly of power, oil, and increasingly the emphasis on nuclear power. Turning from these two forms of fuel, nuclear and oil, to sun means not only breaking the monopoly of the nuclear and the oil club, which is finite in its resources in the case of oil, and still dangerous in its potential in case of the nuclear. So my point is controversial and maybe anti-establishmentarian because of, the monopoly of OPEC, which we had hoped would become OAPEC, the Organization for Petroleum and Energy. And what I am suggesting is a decentralization process, whereby you would talk about a synergy of energy through the sun, from this region all the way across North Africa to Europe.
If we look to the whole change, then you can immediately recognize that this is a totally new paradigm. And then you can imagine how many conflicts happened and will happen. Because it leads to the dissolution of the conventional energy economy. automatically. The primary energy economy will disappear, because it is impossible to change from being a seller of oil, gas, uranium and coal to the role of a seller of solar radiation or wind. That's impossible. Wind and solar radiation is a common good, not owned by anyone. And this is the largest, the most in the conventional primary energy sector, is the most influential, with the highest turnover, the most influential part of the world economy. And then you can imagine the dimension of the conflict which happens. They will disappear. They become superfluous automatically. And therefore they have the interest to postpone it. They know their own end, but they want to postpone it for decades. And we cannot accept that, because society, the world cannot wait to the point when the last drop of oil is consumed, or the last cubic meter of gas, or the last ton of uranium or coal. We cannot wait for that.
I think the paradigm shift comes from the fact that we are talking about 10 billion people on the planet within a very few years. And therefore, time is tight to prepare for this 10 billion. Either the 10 billion will be killed through attrition of wars and regional calamities, or affordable and sufficient water, food and energy, as well as a stable economy and climate, are used as indispensable precondition for civilized life on the planet. And that's where I go back to the complementarity between human warming and global warming. But whether it is politically acceptable is a question of egocentrism versus compassion. Do we want to live in a caring world, or do we want to live in a world of vested interests?
How do we save the planet but still provide mankind with enough energy? The sun's potential is huge. The technology exists, and even the oil-producing nations seem to be shifting towards the sun. The United Arab Emirates commissioned a Swiss engineering firm to devise a plan for the construction of huge offshore solar islands. The oceans have a much higher percentage of high sun areas than the deserts, and there's enough water. Salt water that plants can convert into fresh water, water that can be used to store solar energy in hydrogen, and water to make steam that drive turbines. The islands have a cost-effective mirror system. Here, flat mirrors are used to make sunshine fall onto tubes in which a fluid is heated to high temperatures. This heat is used to produce steam or fresh water. The islands float on a special construction so they can always face the sun. Each sun island is expected to produce many gigawatts. The first prototypes are now under construction. But not everything has to be that huge and awesome. We should also be able to harvest solar energy closer to home. Otherwise, we'll create a new dependence on large monopoly concerns, which is exactly what Hermann Scheer wants to prevent.
If we have a fantasy, then we can see a future in which many small and medium productions with solar energy, converting solar energy, replace very few big power plants. And this is an advantage for the society, a big advantage. It is the way from a monopolistic structure to a broad ownership, to an energy supplying system with many self-production structures, and decentralized creates individual autonomy, local autonomy for energy, regional autonomy, national autonomy. This is an advantage and not a disadvantage.
But how can we harvest sunshine on a large scale in areas with relatively low amounts of sunshine? At the trade fair in Germany, interesting new systems are being presented, like solar panels that can be rolled out along flat factory roofs, thus turning them into mini electricity plants in no time. And an unexpected development comes from the world of flat screens. Producing flat screens is a very similar technology to producing solar panels. In fact, it's just glass covered with a very thin layer of semiconducting material. Until a few years ago, large flat screens were still very expensive. Now everyone's buying them, and they're a tenth of the price they were just 5 years ago. If such large screens can be made, then the step to making even bigger solar panels is quite easy. And that's exactly what's happening right now. Applied Materials is now building machines that can churn out sun panels measuring some 5.5 square meters. Its customers are the big electronic industries of Japan, Taiwan, China and India. In the near future, they'll be providing cheap solar energy on a global scale.
Yes, a solar panel like the ones behind me made with thin film silicon can produce as much energy as was consumed to make the solar panel in about 8 months, well less than 1 year. The energy payback, as it's called, is a very short time. And of course, this is going to continue to make electricity well beyond 25 years. It's a great return on that energy investment. So this is the first time in history where cost-effective energy could be manufactured. Before, we always burn something up.
Machines make it easy to assemble the huge solar panels and turn them into mega solar plants in just a short space of time. And they are, quite literally, mega. Where solar panels once provided kilowatts, they can now provide megawatts, and they'll soon provide gigawatts. This new kind of technology has put an end to the myth that there's not enough space for affordable solar energy in low sunshine countries.
If we would produce 500 billion kilowatt hour in Germany, we would use 3,750 square kilometers. This is less than 10% of the surface which is covered by buildings. And it is possible to integrate this in constructed areas, in buildings, as roofs over streets and so forth and so forth. And we can take vertical spaces because you can take the facade of buildings for the production of electric power. And that means this argument is totally ridiculous. Forget it.
And finally, one more myth. Is solar energy actually that efficient? Wouldn't we be better off harvesting biofuels instead of solar electricity?
You don't see it, but this was a wasteland deposit, and farming was not possible because the yield for the farmer was really poor, so it was worth nothing more or less, and that's why I think here it really makes sense. And what is interesting, even if it would have been an excellent farmland, the energy yield in kilowatt hours, electrical kilowatt hours per hectare, is roughly 50 times higher than via biomass. So imagine, if you have a farmer growing plants, pressing out plant oil, and firing them in a combined heat cycle process, you have 1/50 of the amount of electrical energy. This is incredible, I know, but this is 50 times more effective.
The price of oil continues to rise, whereas the price of solar energy is falling. The technology exists. The electronics industry is all set. Worldwide, all kinds of countries are introducing similar laws to those in Germany. Solar energy will come faster than most people think.
The German example has a worldwide meaning, no doubt. It encourages many governments and politicians and initiatives, free, independent initiatives, grassroots movements, organizations, companies. It encourages to start renewable energy policies everywhere. Because what is possible in Germany is possible everywhere. The argument is over by this practical example that is not feasible, too expensive, not economically, and so forth. The argument is over. And we will arrive with solar power production, with PV. We will arrive in the run of the next decade at costs, including new storing opportunities, at costs for a household which are lower than the conventional costs for buying electric power over the grid. We will arrive at that. And who will hinder people to do that? No one can do it. Only a dictatorship can do that.
How does it feel to be a sort of initiator of a revolution?
Do you know, perhaps you know the sentence of Schopenhauer, who was a German philosopher of the 19th century. And he wrote, a new idea will firstly become denounced as being ridiculous. Secondly, there are many fights against it. And finally, all people were in favor for that from the early beginning. And this will happen with solar energy.